To think about was when do I set boundaries? Where do I set boundaries? And how do I set boundaries? You know, because my life's full of boundaries, you know. And anybody that knows me knows that they want to cross a boundary with me, come ring my doorbell. That pisses me off. You call me before you come to my house. That was addict shit. People come beating on my door saying, hey, you got some? Hey, you got that 50 you owe me? You know, that stuff don't happen in my life anymore. You call me. I sponsored a guy. He come and rang my doorbell one day. I said, dude, you know the rules. You call me before you come ring the doorbell. He went out to his car in front of my house and called me. He said, dude, can I come over? I said, yeah, give me a half hour. He said, where do you want me to go? I said, I don't give a damn, just not in front of my house. That's one of the boundaries I set because that's my house, you know. And it's, you know, I talk to other addicts, and all kinds of other addicts have different boundaries. Some people don't like talking to somebody after they use. Don't call me after you use. I'm like, that's the time they need you the most. Get them to a meeting. Meet them someplace neutral, and do that. I'm one of the few addicts that'll still go out and do, in my area, that go out and do 12-step work. I've grabbed a couple other addicts that had some fairly strong recovery and went to the hotels and grabbed addicts out and get them someplace where they can detox and hopefully get them in meetings. And it is sad when they go back, but it happens all the time. So, you know, I had to think of a few things. You know, one of the things I have to do with the when and where and how on boundaries is I have to remember the definition we use of humility. It's understanding my assets and my liabilities, what I'm capable of, what I can handle, what I can't handle. You know, knowing my place in this world we live in and in my own recovery. And so if I don't want people who relapse on a normal basis coming over to my house, I can set that boundary and say, hey, I don't want you coming over because I never know if you're holding. Well, that would eliminate most of my family, which I don't care much for them anyways, but you know, what addicts do. And so I have to know where I'm at. Am I in the space in my mind that I can go deal with this addict who may be coming off a relapse, maybe still using? Or am I able to, you know, just encompass him or just go away? You know, honesty plays a big part in my boundaries. You know, one of the things that by doing 4 steps I have found was a big root of my problem, and I never thought it was a problem with me, was fear. You know, people say, what do you mean fear? I've seen you drive a motorcycle at over 100 miles an hour. You build buildings that are, you know, hundreds of feet tall. You ain't afraid of this shit. You'll stand up to a big man and likely get your ass kicked, but you'll do it time and time again. You ain't afraid of shit. But all that was a front. I used dope to cover my fear. So am I setting a boundary because I'm afraid I'm going to go back? And if that's the case, don't I need to look at myself to see why is my program lacking? Why have I got this reservation? See, because I'm one of those addicts, I don't believe in the word triggers. You know, I have an NRA gun guide at the house, and every gun I looked at, the trigger's only this damn big. And the trigger's only dangerous in a loaded gun. And how do I load that gun? I have a reservation. I may use if this happens. I may use in this situation. It's their fault because they came to my house with dope. Well, why'd I let them in the door? You know, I was told a long time ago, if I don't pick it up, I can't use it, now can I? I try and keep myself out of the situation where I'm in that position to use. You know, if I'm going to do something stupid like go to a bar to shoot pool, why am I going to a bar to shoot pool? You know, now I've been to a bar a few times because when we finish a project, we finish a building, we'll do what's called a topping party, and a lot of our companies have their parties, their holiday parties at a bar. And that's where I have to set boundaries, and it's those simple rules you hear all the time, and that's actually a boundary. Try and take another addict with you. Let others know that you're in recovery and you don't plan on drinking or using that night. That is not a time to be lazy. Park away from the door where you're not going to get blocked in because these other idiots are lazy enough to park by the door. Have a good damn reason to leave. You know, those are boundaries I set for myself when I get in those situations. And it might not just be that. It might be someone's graduation party. It might be a family function. It might be a wedding. It might be a funeral. But I have to set that boundary. I have to have that line in the sand where if people start crossing it, I know when to get back. You know, I have to have some willingness. You see, because like so many other addicts, I was a people pleaser. I wanted people to like me. And was it because I said yes? Because I give you some dope? Because I had the money to buy it? You know, I was a people pleaser. I have to be willing to, once I set my boundary, guard it. You know, I grew up in the country. I worked a lot of farms, and we would set boundaries for cattle. We put fences up. And I had to work them fences on a regular basis. I had to constantly run my fences to make sure that the fences were still good and they were still doing their job. So I had to continuously assess the situation at that point. And, you know, when it came to me last night when I'm sitting there by a fire, and when I think back at some of the things I used so many times in my life outside of recovery, and I still use them, they apply so much in here. This stuff intermeshes, and I have to do that because, like I said, I'm from the country. I'm just a simple old redneck kid. And if I don't keep it simple, if I try and complicate it, because my mind will go, you got to remember, I'm an addict. I could wake up in the morning with 3 cents in my pocket and get loaded by noon. I had some skills in that shit. So if I try and overthink a situation, I'm going to screw myself up. You know, I have to be open-minded to change. You know, basic text tells us that on a practical level, change occurs when something that worked in one phase of our recovery no longer works. This boundary I set to guard myself when I was new in recovery, maybe I don't need that no more. Maybe I can open up to the newcomers. Because if I'm still guarding myself like I was, 30, 60, 90 days clean, how am I encompassing a newcomer that might need somebody with a little experience in life? A little experience in getting through a few things clean. Like the day I celebrated 3 years clean, on cloud 9, happy as hell, got home, phone rings, my father passed away. So I had to use my network. I had to go to my sisters, I had to do this stuff, but I had to have my boundaries. I had to go down with one certain sister that I knew would help me guard myself, because I knew what was there. Part of setting your boundaries is knowledge of what's there. Why am I setting this boundary? I can't just draw a circle, How many of you remember the show WKRP in Cincinnati with Les Nessman put the tape on the floor? He said that just because he wanted to. I can't set a boundary just because this is my space, stay the hell out of it. I have to set a boundary for a reason. There has to be a reason I don't want to cross this line. As an addict, my thinking tells me, okay, there's a line in the sand. Let's see how far we can push it. On the job I'm doing, we have to set up caution tape and danger tape when we're working. And you see people pushing the tape in, and the tape's up against them, and they're going 3 feet in. I'm like, dude, they're working right there. They're right up above your head while I'm outside the tape. That's not. I drop a 6-pound clamp on your head, you're going to know it. And then it's going to be my fault because you moved the tape. So I need to know when I need to change my boundaries. My boundaries are a little wider now than they used to be. I don't have to guard myself as much. In my home, you walk into my house and it's NA. I got NA signs on the wall. My key tags are hanging from my filing cabinet. Just about everything you see, you look on my little bookshelf and I got a basic text. I got a 3, 4, 5, 6. I even got that purple limited edition one a lady gave me. She gave me a matching just for today with it too. It's like real pretty. But just so you know, just because I got a real pretty basic text and a real pretty just for today, that don't make me a better recovering addict. That just means I got nicer shit. And the funny thing is, I still pick up my old 5th edition with the pages falling out and the circles and notations and highlights and everything else because I know where the stuff is. And that's a boundary, a kind of a boundary that I need to change for myself. But every time I get a new 6th edition and start going through it, I'll be at a meeting, there'll be a newcomer. Where can I get a book? Because to me that's very important, to make sure they have the literature, they have the information. And so I go back to my old 5th edition. And, and if I look at it one way, I'm just being lazy with that. Because I got it highlighted in 5 different colors, and I don't know page numbers, but I know about where it's at, what side of the page it's on, and what color I got it highlighted in when I'm looking for something. And, I catch myself at meetings sometimes being that good sharing son of a bitch that just got all this stuff out of the literature. It's like, that's because I've been through it so many times. I know where it's at and what color it's in. So, personally, I need to go through and go through with a new basic text and just read it for the book again and read it again and go through it to just get out of that. They talked about complacency yesterday, and that's where I'm at with that. That's complacency. Because I don't need to go through all this all over again because I done got it all marked here. I know where it's at. I know where to look it up. But what happens when there was another one yesterday, Life on Life's Terms, when they show up, if I got a pause button in life, hold on, I got to look that up. It don't work like that. I need to know. So I need to keep this stuff fresh. I'm not one of those people that only stick with people with my clean time or above. I like the newcomers because they make me think. It's just like this workshop, I told you it's the first time I ever wrote notes. But it made me think about things in a different way than I ever have before. And that's expanding a boundary. I can't be comfortable in this little space. I need to make it bigger because this is a big damn world we live in. And so I have to go outside. I can't just do the 2-3 little meetings in town, the same places I always went, and then all of a sudden get to a meeting someplace else for some reason, and they do it differently, and you're like, that's not the way you do it. That's not how we do it in South Bend. No, you can't say that. But things are different in different places, and I have to be willing to accept that and learn from that. And by going back and forth, going to different areas, I can do that. But that kind of comes back to that humility. I have to know where I'm at, what I'm capable of. I have to know that I don't know everything. And that was one of the greatest reliefs I ever had in my life when I read the basic text that it's basically okay to not know all the answers because I was the guy that always had to know everything. And a lot of that I learned from my sponsor. Who's usually here for at least one day, but he had a death in the family, so we could all keep our thoughts with Big Bob. But, he told me, I called him and asked him a question one time. He says, I don't know. But he gave me 2 names to call. One of them was Paul Sturman. The other one was Derek. He says, them guys know this shit. Call them. I'm like, damn. So I got a lesson right there. Humility. He knows his boundaries. He knows what he knows. He knows who knows it. So if you don't know, and I try and carry that along too. These are all boundaries that I have. When it comes to guarding myself, I told you one of my boundaries is you don't just show up at my house. I guard who I have over. When I sponsor people, because I go to a lot of facilities and have these people come up with a piece of paper and say, hey, can you sign this and be my sponsor? And it's so they can get an overnight pass, go get some, and then probably relapse and get kicked out anyways. And I have to see you at meetings. Frankie knows this. See you at some meetings. Let's talk about this. And when you're doing these things, you can come to my house. We'll have the cookouts. Come on, we got some pretty good cookouts over there. We can do some good chewing over there at the house sometimes. But those are the things we do. That's one of my boundaries. I have to know you're serious about something. You ain't just coming to my house scoping out my shit. Because that was my game, man. I grew up in the world of, my dad was a remodeling contractor, and I'd go with him at work, and I'd be scoping. I used to get my ass chewed all the time because I'd be in there scoping out people's shit. We'd be going through the medicine cabinet. That's what I did, Some poor lady had a hip replaced and went to get her painkillers and had a bottle full of Tylenol. I feel bad now. I didn't then. Of course, back then I didn't feel shit. And that leads me to another thing that's changed in my life. We was fishing yesterday, and it was neat. It took a young lady who'd never been fishing before, and she caught her first fish, and the fish swallowed the hook. And in the old days, I'd have just ripped the fish apart and took my hook out. I just cut the line off. 3 cents, I'll go buy another damn hook. Hell, they got a whole bunch of them at Walmart. I got a box full of them. Things change. I changed. Something in here said, I care today. I care how other people feel. If someone else is having a bad day and they're all grumbly, in the past, my response was, well, fuck you too. You really want to torment somebody having a bad day? Just smile and say, have a nice day. And it just pisses them off. It's a beautiful thing. And I can do it often. And if they want to have a nicer day, they can. If they don't, I don't give a damn, because they went that way. So my boundaries change. It's not a fixed thing. It's like a battlefront. It flows. It's like my recovery. It says 13 times in the basic text, to our best of our ability. Some days my ability is to the point where staying clean is about all I can do. And that's tough some days. There are some days that recovery and spirituality are just flowing, and I'm just a happy-go-lucky guy, and I'm able to give all this stuff out, and these warm smiles and hugs and handshakes, and just be happy with life. So that changes on a daily basis. My boundaries. See, when my spirituality is low, my boundaries have to go wider. And when my recovery is strong, my spirituality is high, my boundaries can shrink in because I can handle more. And so I have to remember that. And it's all written in the literature, I have to be willing to change. I have to be open to other ideas. If something's not working well in my life and someone says, hey, did you ever think of this? I have to be open to saying, yeah, I'll take a look at that. Maybe I'll try that. Because when I first started doing dope, guy come up and said, hey, you want to try this? I was willing. I'm more than open to that idea. Okay. Shit, when it's free. My drug of choice was yours. Especially if I could get it for free. Don't you have to go to the bathroom yet? A lot of stuff there. So that's the type of guy I was. And also, just so you know, I was the addict that when I went to the bathroom, I took my shit with me because I knew me, and I figured you was pretty much the same. Yeah, I wanted to come back and, all my shit be gone. Where'd everybody go? They were here a minute ago. And be all pissed off again because I was an idiot. So, boundaries are something that are a necessity. If I didn't have any boundaries in my life, the neighbors would be partying on my yard. I'd look out there and have a whole flock of them in my pool. That'd piss me off. So I have to remember that. Boundaries are something that guard me, that guard my family, that guard my friends. My home is my safe place. I'll go there with my little dog and my little wife, and if we don't do nothing, that's it. That's all we want to do anymore. We don't need the nightlife. We don't need no chaos. My life was full of chaos. I had a guy over, he was getting ready to do a 4-step, and he's like, well, I went in my bedroom, and I come out with this, look like a book. I don't know how many of you have been through the court system, but they do a pre-sentence investigation. I got this little book that tells you all the shit I've done. I said, there you go, read that. He goes, what the hell is this? I said, that's me. And man, you look through there and they got pictures of me that, oh my God. I showed one guy a picture one time. He asked me what I went to prison for. And I said, well, what do you think I went to prison for? He goes, by the looks of that, goat raping. No. It wasn't that bad. But my boundaries have to be set. And when I was thinking about that around that fire, it's just like I'm a farm kid again. I'm running my fences one more time. I have to make sure they're there. Do I need Do I need to fence in the cattle in a dead pasture, or can I move it to this greener one? You know, that's where they want to be anyways. And I got to remember, simple thing that I've learned, no is a complete sentence. You know, when somebody asks me if they can cross that boundary and I say no, I don't need to explain my ass. No. That is it. Oh, because da-da-da. No, because I don't want your ass here. You know, because half the time that's where it goes to. They want to keep asking for a reason, and I get brutally honest, and I say, no, I don't want your dumb ass here. Go away. You know, so I have to check my boundaries on a regular basis. I have to keep them up. I have to be willing to change them as the situation calls for. Like I said, there are times I'll have to guard myself a little more. There are times I can let up on it just a little bit. But I don't have to go into the people-pleasing, let people walk on me. Shrink my boundaries down to where I'm locked in my little bedroom and just saying, oh, please, world, just go away. No. It says, this program tells me it's a program for living life. To face life on life's terms. And how can I face life on life's terms if I'm squared away inside this little box because I'm too scared to move? I need to get with somebody. I need to get with my sponsor. I need to get with my network. You know, just so you guys know, about 7 years ago, I was in a facility called the Dukem Center in South Bend. It was a work release home detention facility. And part of my thing was I had to go to an NA meeting. And in that very first NA meeting with Bruce, and he's still here, you know. And at first I clung on to Bruce a little bit, and then I started going to area, you know. I started doing some service, and I met people like Derek and Dan, Drew. I met these people that had this fantastic recovery and all this stuff. I went to some service things and I met Johnny R. You know, it's like, wow, this guy can help teach me some things. He can show me some stuff. Because I don't like to use the word teach in Narcotics Anonymous, because these people aren't teaching me nothing. The people I stick with show me things. And all they're doing is doing what they do, and all I have to do is emulate what's kept them clean. You know? And if they're expanding their boundary to let me in, I can at least give the same courtesy to someone new that wants to do the same thing, that wants to learn on this journey. You know, I have people ask me if I can teach them how to stay clean. I'm like, I can't teach you shit. You know, I'm going to recover. I'm going to recover the way I recover. I do what I do. You want to come along? Come on. Hey, I might be going fishing. We'll talk about recovery fishing. You know, call me on the phone. It's not always about recovery. Hey, how was your day? We'll just bullshit about anything, and if something's bothering you, it'll come up. You know, it's a funny story I told. I had a guy call me on the phone one morning about 3 a.m. Phone rings. I said, hello. And he started going on and on. I never caught his name. I don't even know what he was talking about. But he went on for 45 minutes. I had coffee made. I was ready to lay on some really good shit for him. I had my book out. I'm going to get some good shit going. And he said, thanks, you helped a lot, and hung up. And I went, damn. If I'd have known all that, I'd have just had the hello, put the phone down, and went back to sleep. But, you know, I guess that's willingness. I give my number, at least I answer the damn phone. And I have to remember to do that sometimes. Because, you know, I don't carry my phone on the job all the time. And sometimes I have it off and sometimes I lose it. See, I'm the addict. I was talking to a guy I was sponsoring one time. And he usually called me on the house phone. And he called me on the cell phone one day. And he heard me rummaging around through a lot of shit. And he goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to find my cell phone. He goes, I'm talking to you on it. And I'm like, found it. You know. Or I'm trying to find my glasses when they're on my face. You know, it's just, I killed a few brain cells, okay? Give me a break. Yeah, so I have to remember that this program is for living. And I have to keep my boundaries, but I can't block the world out. Because my sponsor's got a good saying. He says, life's a long time and a lot of shit's gonna happen. And I got to be willing to let that happen. You know, this whole world is based on evolution. My recovery is based on evolution. I'm not the same recovering addict that these guys met at 30 and 60 days clean. I can't be, because if I was, that means my boundaries are too close. That means I'm in a box, you know, and I have to think outside of that box. I have to expand these boundaries a little bit to experience new things, new joys, new sorrows, because life's not all a bowl of peaches. You know, they got pits in them damn things, you know, so I have to keep evolving. I have to keep changing. I have to keep moving. I have to go forward. You know, I heard a guy say one time that this program's like walking up a down escalator. As soon as you stop stepping, you're going to go back down. And I remember that. And the sad thing about that is the gentleman who said that died in an overdose. You know, so basically, if you're new, keep coming back. If you're not, keep coming back. The bottom line is, keep coming back. My act name Bud. Thanks for letting me share.
Okay, thanks, Bud. And our second speaker is Debbie.
Good morning, family. My name is Debbie. I'm an addict. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'd like to thank my friends that kept me up till 5 this morning to help me with this workshop. Love ya. Oh, man. I was in the chow hall yesterday, and my husband came up to me, and he had a big smile on his face, and he goes, I want to congratulate you on your birthday and your choice of topics for your workshop. And I said, I didn't sign up for a workshop. So here I am, you know. First of all, my brain dictionary defines boundaries as things that are acceptable or not acceptable to me in my life today. And I had no idea when I first got clean what a boundary was. I lived my life the way I lived it, and it was fine with me. You know, it was okay if I went from one abusive relationship to another, and no matter how you treated me, I would take very good care of you. And, you know, so life goes on. You know, addiction brought me to these rooms, and I've been married for almost 40 years. My husband got clean way before I did. And so when I first got clean and I started reading the basic text and working these steps and talking to addicts and listening to addicts, I realized that I didn't know what a boundary was and that I had none, and that my behavior had become something that was not okay in society today. And so life went on. I was on fire very early on in my recovery for the first 3 years, and I still wasn't feeling good. Things would pop in my head, and I would be faced with myself, and I didn't like myself very well. Being married for as long as I had been, we got used to living a certain way, you know, and sometimes just because you're in recovery doesn't mean you're the most healthiest person in the world, and you get used to the way things are. You get comfortable. And I started not feeling good about that. And I started hating myself, and I started hating my husband. And so one day, it was probably about maybe the third year into my recovery, I classified as my brain finally broke. I broke, and I had quite a few suicide attempts and relapse, and I left my home because I could no longer stay where I was staying, and I knew I needed a lot of help, and I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know what was okay, what was not okay, but I knew something here was not feeling well. And somebody had given me these 2 books, and I got kind of freaked out at first because I was getting re-cleaned. I was still really into NA. I loved it. It was working in the beginning for me. And they handed me these books, and I know it wasn't NA-approved literature, and it like freaked me out, like, oh, I can't read these. Oh, you know. And it's funny how you come around and people start getting to know you, and they see things in you that you don't see in yourself. You know, and sometimes we can see how sick somebody really is, you know. And they handed me these books, and the books were Melody Beattie books, and I believe it was Codependency and Beyond Codependency, or Codependency No More. And I'm like, I read these when I was in treatment, you know. Boy, I sure retained a lot of information then. So I went to a safe place for a while to get better because I needed to. And one day I picked up the first book, and I opened it up, and it was just like the first time I had opened up the basic text. I said, oh my God, they have written this book about me. And that was the very beginning of finding out that everything in every way I was acting and allowing in my life was not okay. It was not okay to scream at me and I will cook your dinner. You know, it was not okay with me for you to go out with somebody else while I'm back home waiting for my boyfriend, cleaning his home and washing his motorcycle. You know, so that was like the very first eye-opening experience I had. And these books, as it went on, it started actually helping me identify certain things and what was okay and what wasn't, and how I was acting and who I'd become. It showed me ways to start fixing that. And the way to start fixing it is actually say, you know what, this is not okay with me. And I just wasn't quite there yet. I would think about a situation that I really didn't like anymore and that I didn't really want to go on, and I would stay up for days, not eat, not be able to sleep, because I'd be obsessing about, how am I going to do this? How am I going to fix this? I can't live like this. I can't do this anymore. You know, and this disease took me to places like, you know what, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to walk out and never come back. Because that's, you know, that's the easy way, instead of staying and fighting. So when I got back home, I had really started, I'd worked on myself. I made it through these books. I started setting these little tiny boundaries. Like if I didn't want to go to a meeting after being at 6 meetings that week, I would say, I'm going to stay in tonight. I need to rest. And I would just shake. I would shake just saying that, you know. And the more I started laying those little tiny boundaries, like, no, I don't want to do this, or this is not okay with me, the more I was able, the more I practiced, the more I was able to set bigger boundaries. And I got home after about a year of working on myself and getting some outside help. And everything was still kind of the same. I mean, you've got 2 people that have been together for as long as we have. One has been clean. I've been the same. He's been used to that. And when I was gone, I became a different person. I was not that person that left my home. So I got with my girlfriends. They go, you need to try this behavior modification. I'm just like, no, I don't need to do anything. I need to communicate what's okay today and what's not. And just that thought of alone of trying to be a part of repairing my relationship with my husband and my children sent me flying. Oh my God, I would think about, okay, this is how this conversation's gonna go. It's in this book. I'm gonna pick tonight, and the fear would come in, the fear of actually saying, this is what I need, and this is what I want, and this is how I want it to be today, you know. So that first time of actually communicating was very hard, and I think it kind of knocked my husband off his square a little bit. So, you know, things just started getting like really good. You know, I started getting back into recovery, and, you know, my sponsees, I'm on fire, the phone's ringing 24/7, there's all sorts of cool drama and chaos. And I'm in it deep, because now I got some knowledge. I'm gonna help you fix these things, you know, because I just started, but I know now I'm okay, you know, just that one boundary setting alone was just fine, you know, and that took its toll on me. I got to the point where I had to call a bunch of people in the fellowship, and one thing I've learned is, if you're insane, and you bring that insanity into my life, I get insane, and I pass that insanity on to somebody else because I can't deal with it, you know. And so the first time I ever told somebody on the phone is, I can no longer have these conversations with you. The phone went dead, and I like never heard from that woman again. And that always kind of bothered me, but now I know today is she heard me say, I'm not going to talk to you about this crap anymore. It's not okay, you know. So when I was getting comfortable being back home and stuff, and getting into my therapy and my program and everything, and I'm still kind of not liking what's going on in my personal relationship, so I'm like getting to the point where I'm obsessing again. This disease is telling me it's not going to be okay, it's not going to work, you know, because that's what this disease does. It doesn't like when you can fix things and you have a solution to a problem. So I stayed up all night, and I got the books out, and I started ripping pieces of paper, because that's really cool when you're all obsessive and OCD and crap. And I started going through both these books, and I started marking things, and I made sure that the little sticky things were sticking out. And I had a bunch of doctor's appointments the next day, and Mark had to take me, and my thought process was, I'm going to leave these books out, and he's going to know that I need for him to read these books. So that kept me up to like 5 in the morning, because I kept moving the books. It's like, oh no, he can't see him the minute he wakes up. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? So I'm in the bathroom getting ready, and somebody told me to pray. And I just, you know, I'm in the middle of the bathroom floor. I'm just like, God, please help me do this. And I came out of that bathroom. He's sitting in the chair. I look at him. I got these 2 books in my hand. I said, I strongly suggest that you read these books, because if you don't, it's not okay with me. And I'm just shaking like a leaf, and I just walked away, you know. And the miracle was that he took these books, and he read those pages that I had marked, because those pages talked about how I wanted to be today, and what was okay with me. you know, and what I'd gotten used to and what he'd gotten used to. So that was like the very beginning, you know. I pretty much told him that I was a force to be reckoned with today. He just looked at me and goes, "Oh, why did I give her those books?" You know. And from then on, it was all a process. And we have two beautiful daughters, and they learned what they lived. And that was two parents early on that were using, who were not really nice to each other. I didn't know how to be a mother. I knew how to get high. I didn't know that you're supposed to teach your children things. I was living what I learned, that it was okay. It was okay to be abusive. It was okay to be abused and just move on, because it was just normal. That's just the way it is, and that's all I ever knew, you know. And my daughter got in an abusive relationship, and by this time I'm been working on myself, personal relationships, trying to get back the trust of my daughters and become something they can be proud of, somebody that I can be proud of. And so the phone calls started, and it was horrible to be a mother and to realize that abusive relationship she was in is something that I taught her, you know, and that was something that was really hard to swallow. But I'd learned that there was a solution, that I could fix things. I could help her, you know, by helping myself. I was no good until I got better. I mean, until I did some major footwork with these steps and some outside help and the help of the fellowship. So I got caught into the codependency enabling part with my daughter, and I'm trying to fix her, and I'm trying to demand that she needs to do this and she needs to do that, and she was so far into this, you know. And then the sleepless nights came, the phone calls at 2, 3 in the morning, the explanation of how many times this person has hit her, and I'm starting to get sick, and I'm starting to get angry, the obsession's coming back. And I finally picked up the phone and called my sponsor and a couple other friends in this fellowship, and I'm taking, the whole time I'm taking everybody around me through everything that's going on with her, you know. And now I've got them all worried, and they're trying to find solutions, and they're getting all obsessive, and they're calling people like, oh my God, you know, what do we do? And my sponsor simply said, the next time she calls, tell her you can no longer have these phone calls with her, and until she changes her life, do not call me with this stuff. And I'm like, I can't do that. This is my daughter. I have to help her, even if by helping her is keeping her sick. And I did it. And it was the hardest thing that I'd ever done in my life. I felt like the most horriblest person in the whole wide world. But you know what happened? The minute I said that to her, I didn't realize probably for months I wasn't even breathing right. I took this deep breath that I hadn't taken in a long time. And it felt weird to be okay with what I'd just done. And I said a prayer like, please don't let her get murdered tonight, you know. And within 48 hours of Mom cutting that apron string, she ended that relationship. And I'm like, wow, I had a part in that. Me, you know? And she was fine ever since. You know, it was no longer acceptable to her. she broke that vicious cycle. You know, I mean, surprising enough, you know, children of addicts getting in abusive relationships, children of addicts using, you know, it's just amazing. And because of Narcotics Anonymous, that circle got broke right then and there, you know, and it's such a miracle. So I just, you know, there's times, like when the phone used to ring, and it still rings all the time, I would always answer it. It didn't matter what I was doing, how I was feeling, if I was in the middle of meditation or calming myself, I would pick up the phone, you know. So the first time I didn't answer that phone was probably one of the hardest things in the whole world. I'm just like, oh my God, I hope they leave a message. I wonder what's going on, what am I missing? Oh geez, you know, I need to call them right back, you know. And so it was all baby steps for me, just not picking that phone up once. I can now today, if I'm in the middle of working my steps or talking to a sponsee or meditating, the phone does not get answered until I'm done doing what I need to do to keep myself healthy and well. My brother, I have a brother, and we lost connection for like a really long time. And on and off, maybe for the last 10 years, he might fly me out to Mexico or Hawaii, and he doesn't use as much as he used to. But I wanted some sense of blood family in my life, you know. And my program was strong enough, and I know where I can get to a meeting anywhere. I don't care where I'm at, you know. And I was willing to give him another chance to see if he had changed, you know. And he changed quite a bit, but I know that with the life that he led and the way that we grew up, I know that it broke him. It broke his spirit. He moved out at an early age, so he just has done and acted the way he wants to his whole life. So I kind of knew after like the second time I went and visited him that I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable with who he has become and who he still is. I do have some love in here. The connection of any brother-sister relationship was broke years ago, you know, and I thought maybe it could come back, and it did just a little bit. And my brother he's got some problems. So this was a hard one. A couple months ago, my phone rings in the middle of the afternoon, and it's my brother. And he goes, I need somebody to come and pick me up in Detroit. Like, mind you, I'm 9 hours away. My mind's blown because the last time we allowed him in our home, we had to throw him out. He took over my home, my bedroom, my life. He goes, yeah, man, I'm in a bus, and I'm on my way up to see you. I only have $20, but my boss is going to send my paycheck. I don't have a cell phone either. I'm on some guy's cell phone. And I felt myself shake. And I started praying, and within a split second, I said, I don't care how you do it, you need to get off that bus. And you need to call somebody to come and get you. And I mean, I'm shaking like a leaf, and I'm feeling like, oh my God, what did I just do? I'll tell you what I just did. I had a part in saving my life and my sanity. You know, so we really have to make some hard decisions when we come in here and we tell ourselves that we really want a better life. And, you know, it talks about we got to change everything. Holy cow. I'm tired of changing, you know, and it's never ending, you know, and I can actually allow people to be in their space today, and practice their boundaries. My girlfriend got up this morning, her and her husband, and I was sitting at the table, and she goes, "Is this your quiet time?" I'm like, "No, it's not." And they have no idea how that felt, because my first thought was, wow, how nice. I could have told them, yeah, this is my quiet time, and they would have been okay with that, and I'm okay with that kind of stuff today. All I know is if you have some insanity going on in your life and it's continuing over and over and over and over again, all you have to do is say, this is not okay with me anymore. And it's that simple. And there were things that I had to do, little boundaries I had to set, that I was sick for weeks. And all I had to do was open my mouth. Today I can look at my husband and go, I mean it when I told you to empty that garbage. I'm okay with being able to tell somebody that, no, that's not okay with me. No, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. And that is a concept that was never even a thought in my mind. And today I have such a healthy marriage. I have such a healthy relationship with my children. I am proud of myself and who I've become today, but it hasn't been easy. It's a lot of work. But one of my major boundaries is I will never go back to that insanity that I allowed in my life. I don't even give an inch when it comes to certain things today, and I know I'm much better off for it. So I owe a debt of gratitude to Narcotics Anonymous and you all in this room, because I know most of you, and somebody told me once when I left Jackson and all these women started getting strong, we were getting empowered with boundaries. There were a couple of guys that just didn't like me anymore, and because their girlfriends were going, no, that's not okay with me. And when I left there to come home, I looked at these women and some of these men, and I said, thank you for being part of my process. And they said, no, thank you for being part of ours. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know I started something, I'm like, wow, I'm like the Pied Piper, So all I know today, with a lot of hard work and doing things that you are terrified to do, do them. Just do them. We talk about this is a simple program. Oh my God, it really is. But boy, I can really complicate a whole lot of stuff, And all I know is I feel good today. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I got some clean time in, I never thought in my life that my life would be like this and that I would become the person that I am today. And the whole time, all them years thinking I was okay. It's okay to do the things I was doing. It's okay to allow the things that I was allowing, and it's not. It's not. I'm a human being, and I've gained some self-respect today. And that's something I never had, because if I had any self-respect, I never would have allowed that stuff to happen. Because, see, I had to look at my part in things. The way my personal relationships were, I had way over 50% of that responsibility, So it was fun training Mark. It was great. So, honey, I want to thank you for those books that you gave me to help me. And I want to thank you guys so much for being here. And I got a beautiful flower. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. I am looking. We got 15 minutes? 5 minutes. Hey, we got 5 minutes for any after comments. If anybody would like to come on up.
Three and a half. I'm Roxanne, and I'm an addict. I just wanted to share an example of a sponsee and Boundries. It's the most current one that's going on in my life, or where I'm involved in somewhat, you know. The sponsee had been calling me for a number of months about money missing. She has severe disabilities and has pain meds. Some of her medications missing, and etc. At that time, her adult child son was living with her, and his latest girlfriend and their baby. And the relationship kind of went sour, so the baby and the mom moved out, and so he was drinking quite heavily. So he never drinks in the house. He respects her, and he didn't drink at the house, right? Well, next thing you know, she's got a money jar, and the money's missing in this money jar. And he's got money jar, and the money's missing in the money jar. And this had been going on for months. And the thing about it is, every time she'd call and tell me that she was having this chaos in her life, I'd ask her the same questions. Are you locking your doors yet? Well, this is a small town. I don't need to lock my doors. And I said, you know what? How many times do you have to have things come missing in your house before you start locking your doors? Well, I can't. What do you mean you can't? Well, we've only got one key to the back door. And the front door you can only open from the inside. I said, well, that's simple. Get another key. So he has a key and you got a key, right? I think it was the night before we left to come here. 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, she calls me. She says, my son's drunk, he's in a rampage, and he's throwing stuff, and he's screaming, and I'm scared, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what's the problem? His wallet's missing, his money's missing. Oh, I forgot, I left one of the small parts out of here, is that another sponsee's sister spends a lot of time there, off and on, and has stole from her multiple times. And so whenever anything goes missing, that is their first thought. Hers and her son won't even think that it could be a stranger or one of his friends or his girlfriend or anybody else. It's got to be this chick, right? And it's all our mom's fault because this is a sponsee's sister and she brought her to this house. Not taking into consideration that they never locked their doors. And this last time I said to her, so what do you want me to do about it? Well, I don't know. So why are you calling me? Well, I'm venting. I says, you've been venting for months on this situation and you are unwilling to do something about it. And what does our book tell us? Insanity is repeating the same thing, expecting different results. I tell him to get his ass out of the house. He doesn't need to be there. She's set a boundary for the 1st of June that he has to be moved out. That was one we'd been talking about. We'll see if it happens. And she asked him to leave while we were on the phone. And while we're continuing to talk, I said, so what's the problem? Have you not got that key yet? Well, no, but the real problem is the front door's broke now and I can't lock it. Well, I happen to have one of my husband's sponsees living with us right now, and he's a builder. And he happened to be there, and I asked him if he was busy. And he said no. And she had the money to do whatever had to be done, and he went over there and fixed it so that she could lock that door that night, gave her the piece that she needed to get fixed, and told her to go and have a key made. And I'm using this as an example because If it's that hard for us to set boundaries to keep thieves out of our lives, how unwilling are we to set boundaries to keep insanity out of our lives? The first thing is recognition. I cannot change anything about myself if I don't know it exists. Everybody in our Narcotics Anonymous is my eyes and my ears. My sponsees, my sponsor, the men, the women, the whatever. You're my eyes and ears. If you don't call me on it, you don't see it. And you hear me sharing about the same thing over and over and over at the meeting, maybe it's because I can't see it and you can't. But if you're not willing, or you're afraid, or you think because I have more clean time and you have less clean time, get off your ass and tell me. Our lives depend on each other. This is a we program, right? And that might just be the jarring thing in your recovery. And when you come and you tell me this, and I say, well, thank God, no wonder this is what's going on. I really appreciate all your help. Guess what? That person that hardly had any time now has this, I helped someone with clean time. That maybe I can help someone else. I get just as much from the newcomer as they give me, from my sponsees and everything else, But we can't change something we can't recognize or we can't see. If boundaries are your problem, you need to sit down with someone. If it's your sponsor or someone you trust at the tables, sometimes I'll just give my sponsee an assignment. And one night, and if they don't want to really talk to people, I say, you go up to these people, you're going to pick 10 people or 5 people, and I want you to ask him, can you see or her any place in my life where I'm not setting boundaries? And if you don't like to confront people, just tell them, my sponsor's making me do this. Yeah. It sure takes the pain out of the question. Because the other person's like, okay, I got it, I've been there. And then take that information, bring it back to your sponsor or the person you're talking about, and you sit down and look at it together. If you got 8 out of the 10 people telling you the same thing, I think you maybe got a problem there. Time's up. Time's up. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing. Okay, if everybody would like to join in a group circle, we'll close this meeting.